What if a nation that seemed to have been forgotten by time spent ages cut off from the outside world before quickly rising to prominence on the international scene? What stories are behind this shift, and how can a country reconcile its rapid development with its ancient traditions? Greetings from Japan, a country that has seen tremendous transformation from its prehistoric origins through a time of seclusion and its rise to prominence in the modern world. Japan's history is a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and finding a careful balance between preserving the past and embracing the future. Before we go on to Japan's breathtaking modernity, let's examine its ancient beginnings in more detail. Early history of Japan, Yamato State and its first citizens. Our voyage began around 40,000 years ago when the first humans set foot on the Japanese islands. These ancient peoples laid the foundation for one of the most unique civilizations in history. They were most likely from mainland Asia. Many tribes emerged throughout the millennia, but the Jomon people are particularly known for their pottery. They also contributed their knowledge of agriculture and metallurgy. However, it wasn't until the 3rd century AD that Japan began to establish a unified governmental framework. The imperial system in Japan began with the rise of the Yamato state. Even though the emperor possessed symbolic power, mainland Asian ideas, especially those from China and Korea, had a significant influence on the Yamato kings. One of the most significant imports was Buddhism, which was introduced from Korea in the 6th century. The Heian Period, a golden age of culture. Let's fast forward to 794, when Heian-kyo, or present-day Kyoto, was appointed Japan's new capital. Known as the Heian era, this was Japan's greatest age, especially in terms of culture. The intellectual, artistic, and lyrical endeavors of the nobility of the imperial court influenced a large portion of what is now considered traditional Japanese culture. The tale of Genji, which is sometimes considered the first book ever written, was composed at this time by the noblewoman Murasaki Shikibu. But as the court became more and more focused on its pursuit of art and refinement, real political power began to shift away from the imperial family. Battle and carnage will soon transform Japan as regional warrior clans started to assert their dominance. The rise of the samurai. Battles for domination and war. By the late 12th century, powerful warrior families began replacing the royal court's control in Japan. Two of these clans, the Taira and the Minamoto, would fight each other in the famous Genpei War, which lasted from 1880 to 1885. After the Minamoto clan won this bloody conflict, Minamoto no Yoritomo, the clan's commander, declared himself the first shogun, a military leader with real political power rather than the emperor, who remained mostly a symbolic figurehead. The warrior class known as samurai, who would dominate Japan for many decades, emerged during this period. The shogunate, which centralized power in the hands of a few warrior families, was the precursor of Japan's military administrations, the divine defense of Japan, during the Mongol invasion. In the 13th century, while Japan was adjusting to its new power structure, it faced external threats from the Mongol Empire, the longest-running empire in history. Kublai Khan's Mongols attempted 2 invasions of Japan in 1274 and 1281. However, powerful typhoons, known to the Japanese as kamikaze, or divine winds, decimated their powerful fleets on both occasions. The Japanese saw these storms as divine protection that would shield them from foreign attack. The Mongol invasions reinforced Japan's belief in its own spiritual destiny, but internal strife still afflicted the nation. Stability and isolation under the Tokugawa Shogunate. By the early 1600s, Tokugawa Ieyasu had brought Japan back together and installed a new shogunate that would govern for almost 250 years. The most famous feature of the Tokugawa Shogunate, which was centered in Edo, modern-day Tokyo, is sakoku, or national isolation. For more than 200 years, Japan kept itself cut off from the outside world and had very little contact with international traders. There are generally 2 sides to this period of solitude. On the one hand, Japan had extraordinary economic stability and internal peace, and its arts, especially woodblock printing and kabuki theater, blossomed. But because of its seclusion, Japan also missed out on the industrial revolutions occurring in America and Europe. The Meiji Restoration and Commodore Perry, the end of isolation. Japan's seclusion ended abruptly in 1853 when American warships commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in Edo Bay and insisted that Japan open her ports to trade. Japan reluctantly acknowledged that it was hard to overlook the display of military might. When Perry's black ships arrived, everything changed drastically. Pressure from other countries forces Japan to reconsider its position in the globe. The shogunate ended at the beginning of the Meiji Restoration in 1868, and the emperor reclaimed power. Modernizing and industrializing Japan was the aim of the new Meiji government. The swift adoption of Western-style education, military reforms, and the construction of industries and railroads were only a few of the many advancements. In only a few decades, Japan went from a feudal society to a contemporary nation that could compete with the world's most powerful nations. Japan's imperial goals, tensions with China and Russia. As it developed, Japan began to create its military. In 1894, it fought and defeated China in what is known as the First Sino-Japanese War, gaining control of Taiwan and influencing Korea. But Japan's ambitions went farther than that. In 1904, Japan shocked the world by defeating the Russian Empire in the Russo-Japanese War. This victory was momentous because it was the first time in modern history that an Asian nation had defeated a European power. Japan's triumph solidified its place in the international arena, and its official conquest of Korea in 1910 marked the apex of its imperial growth. World War I and Japan's rise to world power. During World War I, Japan joined the Allies and captured German-held Asian territories. Japan used the post-war period to expand its influence across the Pacific, even though it had limited active involvement in the war. But as Japan's might grew, so did its internal strife. Nationalism and militarism were on the rise. The idea that Japan was divinely appointed to lead Asia against Western imperialism gained traction. Because of these growing ambitions, Japan is about to embark on one of its darkest periods. The battle and its effects on the path to World War II. When Japan launched a massive invasion of China in 1937, the brutal Second Sino-Japanese War broke out. Japan's growing resource-seeking and territorial ambitions increased tensions with Western countries, particularly the US. The United States joined World War II as a result of the escalation of tensions after Japan's 1941 assault on Pearl Harbor. Japan would suffer greatly as a result of the Pacific War after the 1945 atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Following its capitulation, Japan was left in ruins, and a new constitution replaced the emperor's role as a heavenly monarch with that of a symbolic head of state. Rebirth after the war, from economic miracle to failure. Despite the devastation, Japan's story did not end there. In the decades after World War II, Japan saw a remarkable transformation. By embracing innovation, new technology, and international trade, Japan transformed its economy from one that was devastated by war to one of the most wealthy in the world. This remarkable turnaround, often referred to as the Japanese economic miracle, made Japan the global leader in electronics, automobiles, and technology. Japan is a perfect example of overcoming adversity and reinventing oneself while preserving one's rich cultural heritage. Conclusion. Japan's history is one of conflict and harmony, tradition and modernization, interaction and seclusion. When we look at Japan now, where modern skyscrapers mingle with ancient temples, we can see the ruins of its incredible historical journey. From its earliest colonists to its present status as a global power, Japan's history never ceases to inspire. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content.